The story of God raining fire and brimstone down on Sodom and Gomorrah is probably one of the most well-known and most profound stories from the first book of the Bible, and probably one of the most well-known stories from the entire Bible as well. But on the contrary, the story of the War of Sodom and Gomorrah is in the list of some of the least known Bible stories, yet it comes a couple chapters before God laid fire and brimstone on the city. What exactly was the war about, and how did Abraham and his band of 118 men supposedly defeated 5 full armies? Well, we'll be discussing the entire thing in this installment of Unsung Bible Stories, where we present to you stories in the Bible you probably haven't heard about. If the Bible was an anime, these would be the filler episodes that everyone skips over trying to get to the main popcorn episodes. If you're enjoying the video thus far, then why not consider leaving a like and subscribing for more installments of this series. But with that out of the way, I'll be diving into Genesis 14 and will be reading from the ESV. And just letting you guys know, I'm not good with names, so there's going to be a lot of audio Bible clips in this. In the days of Amraphel, king of Shinar, Aroth, king of Elasar,
Kedorlaomer,
king of Elam, and Tidal, king of
Goyim.
These kings made war with Bera, king of Sodom, Bersha, king of Gomorrah, Shinab, king of Admah,
Shemeber, king of Zeboim,
and the king of Bela, that is Zor. And all these joined forces in the valley of Sidon, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they had served
Kedorlaomer,
but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year,
Kedorlaomer,
and the kings who were with them came and defeated the
Rephaim in Ashtaroth Karnaim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Emim in Sheva Kiriathaim,
and the Horites in the hill
country of Seir as far as El Paran on the border of the wilderness.
Then they turned back and came to
En Mishpat,
that is Kadesh, and defeated all the country of the Amalekites and also the Amorites who were dwelling in
Hazazon Tamar.
Those first 7 verses, I wasn't getting it at all. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of
Zeboim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar,
went out and they joined battle in the valley of Sidon with
Kedorlaomer, king of Elam, Tidal, king of Goyim, Amraphel, king of Shinar, and Arioch, king of Elasar. 4
kings against 5. Now the valley of Sidon was full of
bitumen pits.
And as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled to the hill country. So the enemy took all the possessions of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their provisions, and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abraham's brother, who was dwelling in Sodom, and his possessions, and went their way. Then one who had escaped came and told Abraham the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of
Mamre the Amorite,
brother of
Eshcol and of Aner.
These were the allies of Abraham. When Abraham heard that his kinsman had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he divided his forces against them by night, and he and his servants, and defeated them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the possessions, and also brought back his kinsman Lot with his possessions, and the woman and the people. After his return from the defeat of
Kedorlaomer
and the kings who were with him, the king of Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, that is the king's valley. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. He blessed him and said, Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abraham gave him a tenth of everything. And the king of Sodom said to Abraham, Give me the persons, but take the goods for yourself. But Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to the Lord God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, that I would not take a thread or a sandal strap or anything that is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abraham rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who went with me. Let Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre take their share. In our previous Unsung Bible Stories installment, we looked at 3 Messianic Psalms, which were Psalms 2, Psalms 22, and Psalms 110. In Psalms 110, it directly references Melchizedek and draws a parallel between him and Jesus Christ, as well as other places in the New Testament doing the same. As we just read in Genesis 14, Melchizedek is described as a king of Salem and a priest of God. Abraham, who we know is later named Abraham, offers Melchizedek a tithe and is blessed. The name Melchizedek is a combination of the Hebrew words for king and righteous, making Melchizedek a righteous kingly priest. But don't get it twisted, as Melchizedek was not a priest of Israel, as that nation was still hundreds of years from even coming into existence, and Abraham, as we read, is still named Abraham and has no children yet. Melchizedek also appears with no record of genealogy or ancestral line, no record of his birth and no record of his death. The eternal nature of the order of Melchizedek, as we saw in Psalms 110 in the last video, is presented in Hebrews 7 verse 3, without father or mother, without genealogy, without beginning of days or end of life. Resembling the Son of God, he remains a priest forever. In other words, Melchizedek appears to transcend earthly existence. This makes him a type of Christ, who truly does transcend earthly existence as the eternal king-priest, who has no predecessor and no successor in his high office. Just as how Melchizedek was both priest and king in the account of him in Genesis 14, Jesus is also both priest and king. He is ultimately the eternal mediator between God and man and the final authority as reigning king, soon to return and establish his physical kingdom in the city where Melchizedek was from, Jerusalem, which at the time in Genesis 14 was Salem. Some Christian commentary sources say that Melchizedek's appearance to Abraham was actually a Christophany, meaning an early revelation of Jesus Christ before he walked the earth alongside man in the New Testament. Hebrews chapter 6 and 7 goes in a lot more with explaining why Jesus' Melchizedek priesthood is superior to that of Aaron and a reference to it in Psalms 110. Hebrews 7 verse 23 to 24 says, "The former priests were many in number, but they were perverted by death from continuing in office. But he holds his priesthood permanently, because he continues forever." Just for context, this is in relation to Jesus Christ when compared to the priesthood of Aaron that was established during the time of Israel for Moses onward. Commentary sources imply that Jesus holds his priestly office eternally, using a Greek word that suggests something that cannot be passed down or changed. Hebrews 7 verse 26 continues by saying, "For it was indeed fitting that we should have such a high priest, holy, innocent, unstained, separated from sinners, and exalted above the heavens." It calls the priest exalted and sinless for all of those reasons. Christ alone can fulfill the office of the Melchizedek priesthood. And with that, we'll end off this installment of Unsung Bible Stories. I just wanted to touch a little bit deeper on Melchizedek and the story that led to him, as well as his connection to Jesus Christ and Psalms 110. If you watched at this point in the video, then why not consider leaving a like on the video and subscribing with post notifications and even sharing the channel with others. On this channel, we primarily break down Christian and non-Christian fictional stories with emphasis on those that have some sort of Christian theme, or with comic panels like this.
Even before Cicioneg's recreation of the universe, he leaves his mark on the universe and planet Earth in such a way that he is obviously being portrayed as a biblical god of creation. Here we see that Marvel works in the biblical narrative of the biblical cities Sodom and Gomorrah. Here we see for what he calls their, quote, sin and degradation.
But we also make more generalized Christian content like this video, as well as an initiative to do Christian creative projects ranging from making replicas of different places in the Bible to adapting Christian fictional work into a small-scale video game. We actually have an ongoing project where we are making a Christian action RPG in the new Fortnite Unreal Engine editor, streaming the progress on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. and at Friday at 7 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time right here on the channel. If you're looking for something else to watch on the channel, then I highly recommend the best war speech, in my opinion, that you will ever find in the Bible.